Morning all. I'd like to go over an exciting over-the-board game I had recently in the Hertfordshire Chess League. So I had been doing well in this league. So this was on the 17th of February 2014. Steve Law was playing white. The year before he had smashed me. I had been playing white against him and he smashed me. That's on YouTube. I'll put a link to that previous encounter perhaps for you to have a look at as well. So was he going to smash me again? E4 from Steve, and I chose actually the Caro-Kann as a little bit of a surprise. I know he's kind of an aggressive tactical player, and I thought this might be quite good to try and play a solid kind of opening. So d4, d5, knight c3, I take on e4, he takes, and I play knight f6, usually actually bishop f5, that's the main line, or knight d7, that's pretty solid as well, but knight f6 offers double pawns two different ways. He did take, and I took actually with the g pawn, so kind of, I think this is a favourite of Bronstein-Larsen, this way of playing it. E takes is also kind of popular as well, but this is the more popular way overall. There's 1200 games in line book with this and about 800 with this. So yeah, g takes f6. It's the Bronstein-Larsen variation actually, so both David Bronstein and Larsen liked this. Bishop c4. I think this is already an interesting move. I thought it was already an interesting move as in any case during the game. On live book, if I can get that working, well, I thought that white sometimes fianchettos here to blunt the G file, and actually the most common move though is c3, and the next one is knight f3. Bishop c4 has been played quite a bit as well, so let's go with that. Bishop c4, and I play a move which is very, very rare here. I thought I was being clever here to try and tap into g2 being vulnerable. I played rook g8. This has hardly been played before. Usually black just gets on with things with bishop f5. The game could continue, for example, like this, where actually black often is sacrificing the h pawn here, for example like this, weakening the queen side. And I knew this theory many years back. I was shown it as well, even when I was a junior player. This is a theoretical approach. So this weakening of the structure to kick the queen from protecting h5. White wins that h5 pawn, but black is getting some good counterplay here potentially. So this sort of position, it's interesting. But anyway, rook g8. I played rook g8, hitting g2, so we have an unusual type of game. He played the kind of extreme looking move queen h5. It does set up basic threats like mating or near mating. I defend this, and he just takes the h pawn with his queen. Rook g7. We have a very exciting start position. If I can win the g pawn or d pawn, I thought I should be okay, especially the d pawn. If he plays queen h4, which he didn't, then possibly rook takes g2 is okay just about, although you've got to be concerned about tempo gains if you do this, so this is a bit scary as well. He actually put the queen on e4, protecting the d pawn like this, and g2 for a moment. I played rook g4, and this encourages f4, blocking in the bishop. So he's a pawn up for a moment, but with f5 I'm nudging the queen away and I'm providing a fianchetto for the bishop. Queen drops to e2, I can regain my pawn. The problem is the tempo gains here. Knight f3 gaining in tempo, and white is actually technically doing very well here. He played a very aggressive move in this position. He's not content with castling, although that is still, I think, good for white. He played actually maybe an even stronger move technically in some respects, bishop e3. If I take the b pawn here, I think this is very risky indeed after white just castles. I'm very much behind in development, this looks fairly unpleasant. Say Queen F6, Knight E5, Rook G7. It starts to look very, very uncomfortable indeed. White is doing fantastically well from an engine perspective in this position, and in fact can also prepare to double up rooks soon. So anyway, no, I didn't take the pawn on b2. I didn't want to lose that quickly. So we go back here. After queen takes d4, knight f3, queen f6, bishop e3. So he's offering b2. I play bishop e6, and he castles queenside. In fact, already there does seem to be a major problem with this position. Technically, if he had taken on e6, queen takes, there's knight g5. And now if the queen moves and white castles, I think the problem is this rook is near stranded. So h3 and then king h2 is actually going to threaten to engulf the rook. For example, knight d7, h3, rook g3. It doesn't look too good for the rook here. I'm just wondering if queen f2 just forces an exchange sack. Yeah, so I think he did miss an opportunity to basically trap the rook. So in this position though, after bishop e6, he castled queenside, which does seem tempting as well, but might not be as incisive as taking on e6. I play knight d7, and this looks very, very scary now, this next move. He played rook takes d7. It might not be the best though, this move here. If I played king takes, I thought I was asking for trouble. Probably white is a little bit better here, but it might not be so huge. This position doesn't seem as though the engine's that impressed anyway here. For white it seems about equal. Instead of rook takes d7, g3. What's the idea behind this? Well, maybe just taking is again dangerous with knight g5 on the cards. If the rook retreats, bishop d4, ouch. If the rook goes back to g8, bishop d4 again, this is quite painful. If the queen moves, bishop takes, queen takes, takes. This is looking horrendous actually, this structure. So yeah, I don't think I've played the best opening with this rook g8 idea so far, if these variations are to be believed. So anyway, rook takes d7, actually I think was my first let off. So after bishop takes d7, knight e5. Apparently bishop e6 is good here. That's a way of giving back the exchange. I castled queenside, and maybe white is still doing well now. If white plays in this position, knight takes f7, hitting the rook here temporarily, the exchange down, but obviously now this is a lot of compensation. Say this position, either knight e5 or g3, with rook d1 to follow. It just looks like a fantastic position. Where are the rooks? What are the rooks doing? Say rook, okay, let's give black a move, rook g7, knight e5. It looks horrendous. The exchange up, but it just looks as though the rooks are not doing a thing here, and white has many threats like bishop takes a7. The king can't move because of d7, so it looks just horrendous actually. The exchange down, but it seems to be a winning position. So anyway, I think I was let off again here. Instead of knight takes f7, knight takes g4 was played. After f takes, bishop takes a7, and I think black might actually be okay here. I played bishop g7 on b2, which apparently is one of the better moves. Queen e5, threatening mate. Got to take this off. And now this position, okay, I'm a pawn down after bishop takes f7. But is this an endpoint, or a start point. It's a start point for me, I thought, because I've got good playing. My king safety issues have disappeared. I've got good counterplay, I thought. So bishop f4 check, and now I played bishop f5, and I thought if I can get my rook to d2, I've got all of a sudden I've got my pieces working together. He's got a slightly weak back row at the moment. g3 was played, bishop g5, so I'm a pawn down, but it's the best position I've had all game, in fact, here. Now bishop b3, rook d2, a3. I mean, the single pawn is holding down two pawns here. King d7, rook f1, I play e6, and now rook f2, and I welcome the exchange of rooks here. I think this is best, actually. If I played rook d1 check, I think well, I thought that I wasn't sure what I was doing here, but I thought with the rooks off, I've got a kind of plan of trying to infiltrate with the king one day, or use this pawn, which is a passed pawn basically. So I do take the rook off, bishop takes, and I bring my king up, bishop c4, and I start moving the pawn, b4, e4, and now I'm after king b2. I'm knowing that the king can come to c3, which might be handy for surrounding the pawn. If I committed it, say e2, and it got stopped and then surrounded, I didn't like that, and I played bishop d2, stopping king c3. I think this is one of the better moves here, yeah, from an engine point of view. Bishop d4 was played, and now b5, and I'm kind of trying to immobilize these pawns as well as these. So bishop e2, king d5, and apparently black is doing about equal here, even though I pawn down. Bishop c5, e3, king b3, and now I play king e5. My idea of king e5 was to play something like this check, and then bishop c4 to try and potentially sack the pawn, but win a bishop by playing e2. c3 was played, giving the king access to c2 if the check. So check, king c2, but now I play king e4. So my plan is being realised that with the exchange of rooks, these tasks of getting the king up the board and the pawn more advanced, they're materialising. But okay, let's see what happened now. Bishop d4, and here I work out a way of trying to win h2 to try and get my pawn back with this zigzagging. Bishop e1. I want to do this to try and win my pawn back. And this game is in a German or adjudication mode at move 42. If at about 10:30 it would either be a sealed move, or well, it would be a sealed move for an adjournment or adjudication. So I would have liked to get my pawn back at this stage. So I was happy with this plan to at least get my pawn back. And if I've got any trump card remaining after that, like a more aggressive king or a passed pawn, then that can be worked out for a later session. So I'm getting my pawn back. Bishop h4. I was very happy here, and in fact, black is doing well. And actually, this is the point where actually I had to do a lot of analysis for the German position. So I think the game ended around here. After bishop g1, the game was actually stopped here at move 42, and my opponents towards the time when we were going to carry on, generously resigned the position. So a few days later, I did a lot of work on this endgame position, which is one of the benefits mainly of this adjudication league, that you can look at endgame positions and study them in depth. And some of the ideas are quite interesting. If white plays c4 to try and get past a pawn, it might be stronger just to give g4 up rather than taking here. Although black might still be okay after a4. This is okay for black. it's apparently it's okay, but it seems less principled than taking with the bishop, because black wants to kind of keep these pawns locked down, doesn't want to give white an a pawn. The g pawn, yes, but it's less dangerous potentially. So bishop takes g4, bishop f2. This would be very useful. King d1, and there was interesting stuff to do with trying to infiltrate with the king very carefully with bishop f1. So this bishop f1 is curious here. If bishop e2, there's another curious waiting move, bishop g2, and it seems as though white is in a kind of virtual zugzwang. If king c2, well, if bishop h5, we just play the check, and we're getting the king to help queen like this. So with e2, so that's simple enough. If king c2, then believe it or not, bishop h3 is stronger than bishop f3 here. Bishop h3 is actually a little bit stronger. So the idea here now is to come back like this, bishop e6, and now to infiltrate with the king. It's possible with king d3. So threatening bishop b3 check with e1 covered to try and get the king out, and this is very bad for white. If check here, king c3, and the pawns can be mopped up. Bishop e2 check, king c3, and the pawns are in big trouble again. But of course, you know, if the wind's not in the bag, it's not in the bag, and I did a lot of analysis in this position, and yeah, it just seems that black can force basically the king out of here delicately with some interesting bishop waiting moves in this position. So after bishop e2 here, bishop g2, it's just a very strong position for white. There was actually a lot of post-mortem analysis. I have another file which I could put in the description of the video if you're interested. Okay, but I was glad anyway that after getting the pawn back and having like the trump cards, they were enough, it seemed to convince a resignation before playing on. Adjournments were actually a key feature in the past of even World Championship matches. The very famous 1972 match between Fischer and Spassky, of course, before the time of computers, would require a lot of more human work. But even with computers, to remember all these variations sometimes is very, very tricky, and it's good to understand exactly what you're doing. To, you know, as the understanding, in case you forget things, is more important often. To be able to navigate your way on the resumption of the game. But anyway, I was pleased with this. I managed to turn a loss last year, a horrible loss against Steve, into a win this year. So lucky this year, especially from the opening. It does seem a disaster, this particular opening, not to be repeated. I wouldn't try it at home, this particular opening. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.